Welcome. NOAA has just released its climate update for January of 2022, and this video is a summary of that report. Let's first take a look at an overall global summary. Globally, this was the 6th hottest January on record. Arctic sea ice was below average, but only just. Antarctic sea ice was the second lowest recorded. It's interesting how these two are often in antiphase with one another. North America was above average. Europe was the 15th hottest January on record. Asia was the 4th hottest January on record. Africa was above average. South America was the 2nd hottest January on record. Oceania had the 7th hottest, and Australia set some new high record temperatures. La Nina is still going strong in the Eastern Pacific, which makes it all the more remarkable that January was the 6th hottest on record. Now let's take a look at some specific temperatures. On the right we have the so-called percentiles map, which shows where temperatures are above or below average, and more importantly it shows where there are record highs and record lows. A record high would be indicated by a dark red, and you see there are a few pixels around on this map that in fact are new records, but less than last time, so it's getting more and more difficult to set records. However, there were no cold records set. That's the very dark blue. There were some much cooler than average, but not that many. Globally, we were 0.89 degrees centigrade above the 20th century average. That was mostly due to the land increase of 1.49 degrees. The ocean was only 0.67 degrees above the 20th century average. That was the 5th hottest. The northern hemisphere was 1.13 degrees centigrade above the 20th century average. That outshines the southern hemisphere at 0.65 degrees centigrade. Now, the reason for that is there's more land in the northern hemisphere than there is in the south, and the land is warming faster than the oceans. We can get some idea of how fast the Earth is warming by comparing the daily high records with the daily low records. And this table is put out by NOAA every day. So I've got the one for January of 2022 here. And you can see that in every category, at least by a factor of 2 to 1, the number of high records are outranking the number of low records. That indicates that the Earth is still warming steadily. With the completion of the 2021 climate record, we now see that 10 of the last 12 years have been the 10 hottest on record. 2022, starting off with a 6th place, is still in line with what was going on in 2021, which also was basically a La Nina year. Now let's take a look at the upper atmosphere. First we'll start with the lower troposphere. And this is the data from Roy Spencer at UAH. Note that this is not surface temperature. It is often represented by some as surface temperature, and it isn't. It's an average temperature taken over the altitudes from 0 to 13 kilometers with a peak sensitivity around about 4 kilometers. So this is relatively high up in a cool part of the atmosphere. There was a decrease in January's lower tropospheric temperatures, but the long-term trend, if you take a look at this data, is an increasing temperature of 0.14 degrees centigrade per decade. Next, we're going to take a look at sea ice. We'll start with the Arctic, and you can see that is below average. It's the 15th smallest. However, that is a decrease. That's a significant decrease from previous Januaries. But when you take a look at the Antarctic sea ice, you see the exact opposite trend. It's the 2nd smallest on record. Well, how is carbon dioxide doing in the atmosphere? At the moment, it's increasing. It's increased by 0.266 parts per million over the previous January and sets a new record for January, as it does every month. So there's little sign of us slowing down our carbon emissions. How long are we going to have to suffer from this La Nina? And it seems for some time yet, according to the models. It could well go into summer of this year or even later. I don't know how much I need to stress this, but the sun has little or nothing to do with the current state of our climate. Over millennia, possibly it does, but at the moment, this global warming that we're seeing has nothing to do with the sun. However, solar cycle 25 that started in January of 2020 is well underway. And you can see here the sunspot number is growing very rapidly. In January we had no X flares, but we had 6 M flares, which are the 2nd largest category of flares. and we had 118 C flares, which is sort of the level for what we consider a significant flare. Solar cycle 25 is well ahead of the predictions shown here in red. This is the NASA and NOAA prediction, and you can see we're at least 50% above that prediction at the moment. And if the pace that's been set in February continues, the next point on here is going to be where that red asterisk is. And you can see that's at least 50 to maybe even 100% above what the prediction was. So we might be in for a fairly large cycle. And so there's no sign of a grand solar minimum, and therefore you're not going to have any, quote, cooling down of the climate as a result of a grand solar minimum. Not that you would have anyway. A grand solar minimum makes almost no difference to global temperatures. So our summary of the climate for January of 22 is as follows. La Nina continues. And so it's amazing that we're getting such high temperatures with such a strong La Nina. Globally, it was the 6th hottest January on record. New high temperature records are being set much faster than low temperature records, which shows that the Earth is continuing to warm in general. And the solar cycle 25 is far more active than forecasted so far. So that's it for today. Thank you for listening. So stay safe, and until next time, goodbye.